If you walk through the streets of Paris on a quiet morning, you experience a city that moves at a very particular pace. People sit at cafe tables watching the world go by. Footsteps echo against old stone buildings. It is a city that feels grounded in the slow, visible rhythms of human life. But for over a century, just beneath the cobblestones, there was a completely different rhythm. Hidden in the dark, damp tunnels of the sewers, a vast and invisible network of wind was carrying thousands of everyday messages through the city. We are so used to the instantaneous nature of our modern world. A text message travels across the globe in a fraction of a second, entirely silently, leaving no physical trace. We accept this as normal. But before the digital age, speed required physical movement. Speed had weight. Speed took up space. Imagine a time when the fastest way to send a message across a sprawling metropolis wasn't through a wire, but through a metal tube. A time when a handwritten note was folded, placed inside a small canister, and propelled by compressed air through the underground dark, rushing beneath the feet of oblivious pedestrians. This was the Paris Pneumatic. Post, a quiet marvel of engineering that hummed beneath the city, lived alongside generations of Parisians, and then, slowly, faded into silence. In the middle of the 19th century, Paris was a city in transition. The Industrial Revolution was reshaping the world, and commerce demanded faster communication. The telegraph had already been invented, but telegraph wires were often overwhelmed, and delivering the final paper message from the telegraph office to the recipient still relied on foot couriers or horse-drawn carriages through crowded streets. Engineers began to look for a different solution. They didn't look up at the sky, they looked down. Beneath the streets, Paris was already developing an extensive, modernized sewer system. These vast arched tunnels offered a ready-made pathway, free from the traffic and the weather above. In December of 1866, the French Postal and Telegraph administrations conducted a vital test. They successfully established a pneumatic telegraph link between the Bourse, the historic stock exchange, and the Grand Hotel post office. It was a small start, but it proved that the concept worked. A message could be pushed or pulled through a tube using nothing but the force of air. For the first decade, this system was strictly for official telegrams, helping to clear the backlog of the telegraph offices. But as the network expanded, its potential became too great to keep behind closed doors. In 1879, the network was opened to private correspondence. It became a public postal system. Suddenly, any citizen could walk into a post office, write a message, and send it flying beneath the city. To understand how this felt, you have to imagine the mechanics of the system. It was a physical, tactile process. When a message was handed to a postal worker, it wasn't just filed away. It was rolled up and placed into a small cylindrical metal capsule, often called a canister. These canisters were the vehicles of the underground. They were designed to fit snugly inside brass or iron tubes. In the bustling basements of local post offices, massive, steam-powered, and later electric, compressors generated the air pressure needed to move the canisters. When a canister was loaded into the breech of a tube and the valve was opened, a blast of compressed air would shoot it forward. Alternatively, a vacuum could be created at the destination to suck the canister through the pipe. Once inside the tube, the canister plunged into the dark. It traveled through the sewers. It ran alongside railway lines. Eventually, the tubes were even strapped to the underside of bridges to cross the river Seine and routed through the tunnels of the newly built metro. Below ground, these metal capsules were traveling at impressive speeds, navigating the subterranean geography of Paris, while the city above went about its day. When a canister arrived at its destination office, it would land with a heavy, satisfying thud into a receiving tray. A worker would open it and extract the messages. After arriving at the nearest office, the message still needed a human courier for the final streets to deliver the paper directly into the hands of the recipient. By the 1930s, the network had grown into hundreds of kilometers of tubes beneath Paris, connecting many local post offices across the city. But the true heart of this system wasn't the metal tubes or the air compressors. It was the paper. To use the pneumatic post, you didn't use just any envelope. You purchased a specific piece of stationery designed exactly for this purpose. Between 1897 and 1902, these letter cards were printed on a distinctive blue paper. Because of this, the messages earned an affectionate nickname that stuck for decades: Le Petit. Bleu, the little blue. To send a Petit Bleu was to participate in a unique urban ritual. You would write your note, fold the card, seal its gummed edges, and drop it into a special mailbox. Historical archives hold thousands of these fragile pieces of paper. The Musée de la Poste in Paris preserves many of them, including a Pneumatic card sent to Petit that arrived on May 23, 1944. When we look at these cards today, we see the mundane, beautiful reality of everyday life. We can imagine the kinds of notes people wrote. A quick message to say someone was running late for dinner at a bistro. A brief note from a businessman confirming a meeting. A short, urgent line from a lover. Because the pneumatic post offered rapid delivery across the city, it occupied a unique space in communication. It was more thoughtful than a telephone call, yet much faster than traditional mail. It allowed the people of Paris to have an ongoing, almost real-time conversation with their city, facilitated by the hidden winds below. For decades, the system thrived. It survived 2 world wars, quietly doing its job, while history raged above. But cities change and technologies shift. In the latter half of the 20th century, the landscape of communication began to evolve rapidly. Telephones became common in almost every home and business, offering truly instant voice contact. Then came the telex machine and later early fax services, which could transmit documents electronically without needing a physical canister. The pneumatic network was aging, maintaining hundreds of kilometers of underground metal tubes, subject to the dampness of the sewers, temperature changes, and the sheer wear and tear of decades of use, was becoming increasingly costly. The physical rush of the Petit Bleu was simply no longer needed. There was no dramatic collapse. There was no sudden catastrophe that ended the pneumatic post. Like many quiet systems in our world, it simply faded as we found new ways to do the same thing. It became slower, less utilized, and eventually obsolete. On March 30th, 1984, the Paris pneumatic post came to an end. The compressors were turned off, the last canisters were emptied, and the network fell silent. Today, Paris continues its modern life. Smartphones glow in the hands of people sitting at those same cafe tables. Messages cross the city in milliseconds. But if you know where to look, fragments of the old system remain. In some old post offices, you might spot a sealed-off brass tube. Some traces survive in archives, museum collections, and documented fragments of the old network. They are silent now. The rushing air is gone, but they remain as a forgotten footprint of ordinary life, a reminder that once the very breath of the city carried its stories through the dark.